I never expected the day I confronted an arrogant kid would change everything for me. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense of foreboding wrapping around us like a predator stalking its prey. I could feel my heart kicking hard against my ribs, each beat pleading for courage. It was a day that started like any other. The sun was bright, almost too bright, casting long shadows that danced on the pavement. But something was brewing beneath its surface, a storm that would come crashing down on my life. That I was standing in the cafeteria, trying to enjoy my lunch, when I spotted him. Jake. This smug grin plastered on his face like a mask, eyes gleaming with that unsettling charm that disarmed everyone around him. He moved through the crowd like he owned the place, leaving a trail of whispers and enchanted gazes. My stomach twisted at the sight. I hated him, not just for his arrogance, but for how he seemed to thrive off the chaos he caused. It was never about me, but somehow it always felt personal. I wasn't just another face in the crowd. I was someone who stood up for the quiet ones, the ones who didn't get a voice. My best friend, Mia, often said I was too bold for my own good, but standing there, her words echoed in my window warning bell I chose to ignore. It was a moment of recklessness that would change my future forever. With trembling hands, I got up. The cafeteria chatter faded into a murmur, and the world around us came into sharp focus. I felt every set of eyes on me, watching, wondering. Doubt crept in, like a cold draft seeping through cracks in a door. But anger flared brighter than the fear. It surged through me, igniting a fire I didn't know I had. "Hey, Jake, what's your problem?" I shot my voice across the room, cutting through the noise. Time seemed to freeze. The clinking of trays and the laughter of others faded into a haunting silence. His head snapped toward me, surprise flashing across his features, quickly replaced by that sneer I hated so much. "Pathetic," he scoffed, dismissing me with a wave as if I were nothing. But the silence shifted. A ripple of gasps rippled through the crowd. I felt it in my bones. I was out of my depth, but there was something I couldn't shake. A strange electricity hung in the air, thick as fog. I felt it even before he opened his mouth again. "What's wrong?" "Jealous that I'm everything you can't be." His words sliced through the air, sharp and cruel. My breath hitched. The truth behind his taunts was more than surface-level pain. It was an invitation, a challenge to confront not just him, but every hidden insecurity I wore like a second skin. That a strange impulse surged through me. Did I want to back down and disappear into the crowd, or stand up and face the storm? The cafeteria buzzed with tension. I could feel their stares. Some were filled with pity, others with delight, but all were eyes of judgment. My pulse raced faster, a steady thrum in my ears. Before I could second-guess myself, I stepped forward, past the tables laden with food and gossip. The smell of warm pizza hung heavy, but it couldn't distract my mind. "You don't even know me," I spat, every word charged with desperation and anger. "You think you're so superior, but inside, you're just as insecure as the rest of us." A murmur flowed among the students like a wave. I could barely catch my breath, but it felt good. For a split second, something flickered behind Jake's arrogant facade, a crack in his armor. But then he recovered, his facade tightening like a cruel mask. "Keep dreaming, loser. You'll always be beneath me." Just then, something shifted. The corners of the room seemed to darken. Chairs scraped the ground, laughter echoed, and I heard something foul, an audible gasp, as someone's phone slipped from their hands, shattering the air. My chest tightened. My words hung in the air, suspended between us. What had I done? And then, out of nowhere, came a loud crash as the cafeteria door swung open. A shadow entered, cloaked in mystery. Everyone turned. But none of us were prepared for what we were about to hear. I will never forget that moment, the shift in the atmosphere. The world outside was bursting with color and life, while inside, an icy dread clawed at my insides. A silence fell. I held my breath, anticipation thrumming in the air like a live wire. Who or what was coming in? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." The atmosphere felt electrified, as if the world were holding its breath. I glanced nervously around the cafeteria, expecting to see the usual mix of curiosity and disdain reflected on the faces of my classmates. Instead, a sense of uncertainty clung to the air, morphing their gazes into something heavier, a blend of trepidation and wonder. And then I saw him, the figure framed in the doorway. Tall and broad-shouldered, with an unsettling calm that exuded authority, he carried an air of confidence that felt almost weighty. His hair was dark, tousled in a way that suggested he had just rushed in, perhaps chasing after something fleeting. He scanned the room, those sharp eyes drinking up every detail, before settling on me. Jake, momentarily taken aback, narrowed his eyes, shifting his posture slightly, as if preparing for some impending confrontation. Whispers skimmed across the crowd, and I could feel the weight of both their expectations and my own spiraling out of control. Who was this stranger? And why did he seem to spark a flicker of acknowledgement in my chest, though I couldn't explain why? "Can I help you?" Jake's words dripped with sarcasm, but the newcomer didn't flinch. Instead, he took a step forward, and the air seemed to grow heavier, more tense than before. "Actually, yes," he replied, voice low but filled with undeniable authority. "I believe you wronged someone." Murmurs erupted among the tables. I stood frozen, fighting the urge to sink back into the crowd. Looking into those piercing eyes was like staring into the void of consequences laid bare before me, a reflection of my own fear, the doubt that resided in the back of my mind. Before I could process his words, Jake suddenly laughed, the sound bitter and sharp, echoing over the din of whispering voices. "Who do you think you are? You really think you can come in here and lecture me?" The newcomer didn't respond directly. Instead, he turned toward me, his gaze softening. "What's your name?" The question sliced through the tension, and something about his tone felt different, genuine. For a split second, I found myself wanting to tell him everything. My fears, my hopes, the way I had felt crushed by Jake's constant taunting. But my voice caught in my throat, tangled in vulnerability. Ella," I managed, the sound coming out barely above a whisper. "Right, Ella," he said, nodding perceptively. "You deserve to be heard. Everyone in this room does. So why not stand up for yourself?" There he was, someone challenging the other side of fear I had felt creeping in. I glanced at Jake, who was now looking less assured, attempting to regain his bravado, but the tide had shifted. The cafeteria felt eerily silent, all eyes on this budding confrontation. "Want to talk about pathetic?" Jake spat, his voice barely concealing the tremor of uncertainty. "You're going to take advice from some wannabe hero? Please." But the newcomer merely smiled, unbothered by Jake's bravado. "The real lesson here, Jake, is about recognizing the strength in others. Something you seem to have never understood." I could hardly breathe. This wasn't just about me anymore. Somewhere, in those moments, I realized the weight of expectation that had formed around me. The newcomer's bravery fed off my own simmering defiance. But just as hope flickered through me, a loud commotion erupted at the entrance. A teacher rushed in, breathless and frantic, calling for Jake by name. The expression on her face twisted my stomach. This was no ordinary interruption. It felt ominous. "Jake, we need to talk. Now." His smirk faded, replaced by a glimmer of something almost fearful, and the confidence he wore like armor began to crack. I watched as he exchanged glances with the newcomer, a fleeting moment of recognition flashing between them. They were connected in ways I couldn't understand, but the dread that draped over us was palpable. "Ella, stay right here," the dark-haired figure said firmly, his eyes locking onto mine, their weight clashing with the sudden apprehension in my heart. "Wait, what?" I stammered, confusion washing over me. Just as the teacher beckoned more urgently, Jake followed her, his stride back towards the doorway quickening. The atmosphere shifted again, tension spilling into fear, and as he disappeared out of sight, I felt that flicker of hope dimming under a shadow I didn't understand. Questions circled in my mind like leaves in the wind. What had I just stepped into? The room buzzed again, but this time not with confrontation. An uneasy sense of apprehension rippled through the crowd. I turned back to the newcomer, searching for answers. But he was already moving toward the door, leaving me engulfed in uncertainty. It felt like I had entered a storm, and just when I thought I could find shelter, the winds changed direction, leaving my heart pounding wildly in anticipation. I was left standing there, wondering what would come next, and praying that whatever storm lay ahead wouldn't tear me apart completely. The atmosphere in the cafeteria remained charged with muted whispers and anxious energy, but my heart drowned out the sound. I clutched the edge of the table as if it could ground me, the remaining uncertainty wrapping around me like a shroud. The newcomer had stepped forward as if to shield me, to give me strength even in that quiet moment. But now, he was gone, leaving me stranded in my own tumult. Suddenly, the weight of the room shifted again, and I could feel the glaring attention of my classmates peering through their confusion. I wanted to scream at them to look away, to stop judging me for something that wasn't even my fault. Anxiety ebbed and flowed inside me like a restless tide. I hadn't asked for any of this. I hadn't asked for help, yet it had been offered in the most unexpected of circumstances. I stood frozen, both relieved and weighed down by uncertainty. A gentle hand brushed against my shoulder. I flinched, startled, and turned to find my best friend. Her wide eyes searched mine, a flicker of warmth breaking through my haze. "You okay?" she whispered, her voice carrying a softness that felt like a beam of sunshine cutting through thick clouds. "No," I admitted, trembling. My mind raced with the confrontation, the weight of Jake's words, the startling bravery of the stranger. "I don't know what just happened." Mia glanced toward the direction the newcomer had vanished. "That guy stood up for you. That's huge. You should be proud." But I felt only confusion and a sinking dread. What if it backfires? What if Jake comes back angrier? I don't want him to drag me down even further. Mia squeezed my shoulder tighter, a gesture of solidarity. "You faced him today, Ella. Remember that. And you didn't do it alone. This stranger, you've got someone in your corner now." Before I could respond, a commotion broke out near the entrance as the teacher and Jake returned. His face was drawn tight, eyes darting every inch, defining a boy no longer full of bravado, but instead marked by a growing vulnerability. Whispers erupted around the room, and the tension mounted again, feeling like a coil ready to snap, that I instinctively stepped backward. What if his anger turned toward me now? The newcomer had somehow made things worse by prompting Jake's volatile anger. I could sense everyone's excitement and curiosity. They were nothing but spectators waiting for the drama to unfold. The air felt thick with fear and disappointment, hanging heavy, threatening to suffocate. "Everyone, settle down," the teacher commanded, her voice slicing through the murmurs. The students slowly complied, though a brittle energy still thrummed in the air. I barely registered Jake's return to our table, his posture stiff and defeated. "I thought I made myself clear." Jake started slowly, his voice strained, as if he were holding back an avalanche of emotions. "You think you can come in here and act like a hero? You don't know anything about me or what I'm capable of." The newcomer had been a flicker of light, but now shadows loomed larger than ever. My pulse quickened as Jake's eyes roamed the cafeteria, seeking allies among the onlookers. "It's over, Jake," the teacher finally interjected. "You need to understand that hurting others won't protect you. This stops now." As if on cue, the students shifted slightly, forming a barrier that pushed Jake back from his triumphant stance. They were no longer just watchers. They were participants in this complex weave of emotions. Hope bubbled within Meme. My classmates were learning to stand together, even against the undercurrents of fear. But the moment of hope faded as Jake's gaze snapped back to me, sharpening like a predator spotting its prey. "You think you're safe now, huh? You think one speech makes you untouchable?" A pit formed in my stomach. I opened my mouth to respond, to protest, to beg him to stop, but no words came. My body turned to stone as he advanced, a predator closing the gap, hungry for the chaos that whispered on the edges. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through the tension. "Ella." The dark-haired newcomer re-entered the fray, stepping between Jake and me as if a guardian out of a fairy tale. "Back off." The stark intensity in his voice fortified the timid hopes in my heart. I couldn't help but feel a flicker of trust igniting inside me, something I hadn't allowed myself the luxury to feel for too long. The world around us faded, leaving behind only the tension of this moment, the clash between fear and fierce, unyielding strength. But Jake's laughter erupted, cruel and mocking, coated with a brittle edge. "So now you're playing the hero? This isn't a movie, man. People like you don't get to play savior. In that moment, as I stood between two worlds caught in a whirlwind of heroism and cruelty, I felt vulnerability seep back in, twisting dread and hope into an unexplainable knot within me. I glanced at the newcomer, heart pounding, searching not just for answers, but for a way out of this nightmare. Ella. Jake roared again, the sustain of his anger echoing off the walls. You're going to regret this. Yet before I could take a breath, before I could sense any potential for escape, the world fell silent. The cafeteria doors swung open wildly. A girl one I recognized from my math class stormed in, breathless and wide-eyed. You guys wait. You need to see this. The focus shifted, pulled away from the brewing confrontation, but my heart continued to race with anxious anticipation. I caught the stranger's gazia promise of understanding, of hope nestled in the depths of an unknown universe staring back at me. But just as I turned toward Jake, a new wave of confusion washed over me. What did she know? Would it change everything? My stomach tightened with apprehension, leaving me on the brink of yet another cliffhanger, grappling with the chaos of impending revelations that might either save me or tear my already frayed world completely apart. The cafeteria seemed to breathe a collective gasp at the new girl's sudden entrance. It was quiet, heavy with suspense hanging like a tightly strung bow. I felt the shift a palpable change in momentum, the air crackling with uncertainty. Would this be the twist that altered the course of my life? The newcomer, breathless and flushed, stood at the threshold, her tiny figure dwarfed by the towering doors. She scanned the room quickly, a whirlwind of adrenaline painted across her face. Ella, she called out, her voice trembling. You need to see this. It's urgent. MIA's grip on my shoulder tightened as a rush of unease coursed through me. Keeping Jake's ire at bay was already a monumental task. Could there be something worse waiting in the wings? The uncertainty gnawed at me, each heartbeat echoing the dread growing within. Jake flared his nostrils, agitated by the interruption. What's your deal? He barked, anger crackling like static. The newfound explosion of attention diverted from him, yet he loomed behind me, a dark shadow eager to swallow me whole. The girl finally broke free from her paralysis and rushed forward, strands of hair spilling across her cheeks. There's a video online of you, Ella. There she hesitated, eyes darting nervously. They're making fun of you, and it went viral. My heart lurched at the absurdity of her words. I couldn't process what she was saying. Instead, disbelief washed over me like cold water, numbing my senses. Viral? What do you mean? My voice quivered with uncertainty as MIA's hand fell from my shoulder, retreating slightly as the weight of the revelation settled in. People are saying awful things about you, Ella, she continued, her voice barely more than a whisper. They recorded what happened in the hall last week, Jake and you. They're mocking you everywhere, and that's not all. They're discussing things that happened before, too. It's got people angry. A heavy silence cloaked me, pressing like a lead blanket wrapping around my shoulders. My world, already precariously balanced on the edge of fear and confusion, just tipped into an abyss I wasn't prepared to face. Jake's laughter, dark and twisted, sliced through the silence. Guess you should have thought about that before acting tough, huh? He stepped closer, exploiting my confusion, like a hyena tasting victory, his eyes glinting with malice. No, I stammered, feeling dizzy with the weight of it all. Panic cascaded through me, twisting my stomach into knots. In this moment, it felt as though I was reduced to mere fodder for their amusement, another target in their cruel game. Ella, the stranger continued, her voice steadier now, filled with an urgency that anchored me to this moment. It's not just a video. People are rallying behind you too. Some want to stand against them. I think she hesitated again, collecting her thoughts. I think we can turn this around. But hope felt fragile amidst the cacophony of emotions thrust at me all at once: hopelessness, dread, vulnerability. I caught a glimpse of Mia's sympathetic eyes, filled with concern and friendship that had been my sanctuary through the storm of uncertainty. What are you saying? I whispered to the stranger, desperation gathering at the corners of my voice. They've started a hashtag Justice for Ella. It's trending, and I think we can use it. She pressed on, her fervor igniting a flickering flame of resilience within me. If enough people share it, it might inspire others to defend you. We could fight back. but lingering courage collided with the cold dread swirling in my chest. Any recourse felt overshadowed by the thought of Jake's dark willingness to strike again, armed now with the armor of public ridicule and digital ridicule. What if rallying against them only made things worse? Suddenly, the cafeteria doors flung open once again, echoing my swirling thoughts, a blur of motion as another group of students piled in, red-faced and electric with excitement. Did you hear? They're calling her a coward online. One shouted over the hushed whispers. Cold terror gripped me tighter, rendering me speechless. I felt the newcomer's presence beside me, her determination illuminating the corners of my growing anxiety. Don't let them drown you, Ella, she urged softly, as if sensing my spiraling thoughts. Yet, even as hope flickered, dark clouds still loomed ahead. I turned to face Jake again, expecting to read contempt, but instead found something more dangerous: calculating intrigue. This is far from over, he stated, weighing my despair as if considering his next move in a twisted game. As whispers echoed around the room like unrelenting tides, I realized with sickening clarity that my life was tearing apart in real time, and I had become an unwilling part of a narrative far greater than I could control. With Jake looming behind me, unwilling to relent, and fragments of my own identity being distorted beyond recognition, I was left teetering on the precipice of fear and uncertainty, wondering how far I was willing to fight for what life I had left. In that moment of chaos, I felt the walls closing in, and as my heart raced in frantic beats, the only thing louder than the buzz of rallying voices around me was the creeping sense of doom whispering my name, urging me to stand tall before the wave crash. As I gathered courage, another thought struck. If this was my moment to change everything, was I ready for what would come next? The cafeteria buzzed with chaos, a symphony of voices swirling around me. Laughter mingled with jeers, glances darted uncomfortably between tables. I stood frozen, trapped at the epicenter of a storm, simultaneously an unwilling spectator and the target. All of a sudden, everything felt amplified, like a spotlight had been thrust upon me, revealing my vulnerabilities nakedly to the world. Ella? MIA's voice broke through my fog, her concern wrapping around me like a lifeline. She was my anchor, but even she seemed small against the enormity of the moment. You need to do something. Don't let them see you break, she urged, her eyes pleading. That I in a way, she was right. This was my moment, yet I couldn't shake the fear that every action would simply fuel their fire. What if it makes things worse? I whispered back, my voice barely audible over the noise. The girl who had brought me this news, persistent and resolute, placed a reassuring hand on my back. We can't know if we don't try. Let's just take one step at a time, she said, her spirit igniting a flicker of bravery within me. But even as I felt the stirring of resolve, Jake's chilling presence loomed over me. An online hashtag? So ridiculous. I guess they need something to keep themselves entertained, he mocked, disdain dripping with every word. Surrounding students laughed, some genuinely, others merely joining in because it was easier than standing apart. The newcomer stepped forward. Why don't you stop hiding behind your friends, Jake? You talk a big game, but we all see who's really scared, she challenged, her voice ringing defiantly in the din. A murmur swept through the cafeteria, surprise blooming where I hadn't expected it. Could someone actually be standing up to him? My heart raced, bolstered by the unexpected solidarity. Yet I couldn't shake the lingering fear. Jake was dangerous, and he didn't take kindly to being challenged. The tall figure shifted, eyes narrowing. I didn't realize you had a mouth, little girl. You'll regret that, he said, a smile creeping onto his face that felt all too predator-like. Ella, listen, the newcomer implored, gently nudging me forward. We can't let him intimidate us. Let's take control. As I took a shaky breath, part of me yearned to fight back, to reclaim my narrative. But the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on my shoulders. What did fighting truly mean? How far was I willing to go? Suddenly, a voice piped in from the back of the cafeteria. Why do you care so much, Jake? Why do you always have to tear others down? A girl with a soft-spoken confidence stepped forward, her dark hair cascading behind her. I recognized her as Allison, known for being wise beyond her years. If you need to make someone feel small to feel big, maybe it's you who's really afraid. A palpable shift occurred, the energy humming in the air thick with disbelief. The room was suddenly charged with an unexpected hope, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I could sense a collective urge to shield me from the darkness Jake embodied. Moments like these became precious jewels, each glimmering with the possibility of strength. Jake's facade cracked, and the dismissive laughter faded from his face. "You think you're clever? You're just another loser standing with her," he snapped, but a bead of irritation began to bubble beneath his bravado. In that moment of tension, the newcomer turned to me, her expression urging. "Together, we're stronger. We can confront this if you're ready." I opened my mouth to respond, to find the words that could ignite some spark of courage. But as I was about to speak, my phone buzzed in my pocket, almost painfully loud amidst the tension. My heart skipped. I fished it out, scanning through the messages. The screen pulsed with notifications, each one revealing new layers of chaos. Students were posting more videos, some in my defense, others parodying me further. But there was one that caught my attention, a direct message from someone I wouldn't have expected. "Ella, we need to talk. I have something important that can help you." It was from Sarah, an acquaintance from my English class who I hardly recognized in this mess. Sarah had always been quiet, lurking in the background, but when I processed her words, an undeniable curiosity stirred within me. What could she possibly know that could change the game? But before I could respond, I felt a surge of panic when I noticed Jake shifting towards me, eyes blazing with rage, his fist clenched. "Who said you could rally support? Huh? You were just playing at being brave," he hissed. I felt the walls cave in as the noise in the room faded, every heartbeat thudding loudly in my chest. This was an avalanche gathering speed, and I was left teetering at the edge of its wrath. The girl who had initially sparked confidence in me had turned to stone, and at that moment, when everything came to a head, I realized one thing that would forever change my life. I had to confront the monster lurking in my shadow. With trembling hands and an unsteady voice, I stepped forward. "No, Jake. This time, it's your turn to listen. Would I find the strength to speak my truth, or would words bury me deeper beneath Jake's torment?" The weight of my next decision hung in the air, pregnant with possibilities, each more daunting than the last. And as I stared down the boy who had been my tormentor, the tension felt like a snapped string ready to unleash a storm neither of us were prepared for. The cafeteria pulsed with energy, a swirling storm of tension that felt as palpable as the air I was struggling to breathe. My heart thudded against my ribcage, a primal warning that urged me to retreat, but there was no turning back. Each gaze in the room, both sympathetic and predatory, fell upon me, and I knew I had to hold my ground. Jake's laughter cut through the silence like a jagged knife, and I felt my resolve waver. "Listen to you, trying to be tough. What will you do? Throw a pencil at me?" His mocking tone elicited snickers from the crowd, but I felt the heat of defiance rising within me. In that moment, an unexpected calm washed over me, as if time had stretched, allowing clarity to seep in. I realized this was about more than just confronting Jake. It was about reclaiming my voice, a voice that had been silenced for far too long. "You don't get to define me," I said slowly, each word deliberate and much stronger than I felt. Emily, the girl who had rallied beside me earlier, shot me an encouraging grin as if encouraging the flicker of courage inside me. The camaraderie we shared ignited a small flame of hope. "She's right," she shouted, her voice slicing through the harshness as easily as butter. "We've had enough of your nonsense, Jake. We're not backing down." There was a ripple of agreement. Some of my classmates nodded, their resolve beginning to show through the insecurity and fear that had once silenced them. As Jake's expression morphed from smug amusement to irritation, I took another breath, allowing myself to delve into the deep well of hurt buried beneath the weight of his actions. "It's not about being brave. It's about not being scared anymore. AW, isn't that sweet? The scared little girl thinks she's found her voice," he scoffed. But there was a crack in his facade that gave me pause. Instead of flinching, I pressed on. "You think I don't get what you're doing? You hide behind insults because you're scared. Scared of being alone, and scared of being seen." His face twitched, the mask of the bully beginning to crumble. I could see him wrestling with the confusion of my words. Part of me wanted to shout, to press the advantage, but I suddenly felt the urge to take this conversation somewhere deeper, to shine light into the dark corners of his bravado rather than simply confront him. "What's wrong, Jake?" I asked, lowering my voice so the crowd could listen in. Why do you feel this need to hurt other people? It must be exhausting. For a moment, there was silence, all eyes riveted on him. The laughter faded into an uneasy quiet, the kind that fills a room after an unexpected proclamation. I felt both triumph and fear swirling within me as I realized that I had made a choice. I was standing up not just for myself, but for a whole community that had ebbed and flowed around this tempest of cruelty. Suddenly, Jake's expression shifted, his bravado flickering as guilt replaced the contempt. I'm not scared, he muttered, though there was an underlying quaver in his voice. He glanced around the table, seeking support that seemed to dissolve before his eyes. Before the thundering chaos of the cafeteria could settle into a tense silence, my phone vibrated again, pulling my focus. The notification brightened the darkness of my mind, revealing a new message from Sarah. Meet me after school. I have something you need to see. That a shiver of anticipation trickled down my spine, but it was quickly overshadowed by the intensity of the moment before me. Jake had recoiled slightly, surprise flickering across his features, as if he had never imagined I would confront him with such honesty. But instead of retreating, I leaned in, craving a closing of this painful chapter. Just then, the lunch bell rang, a piercing sound that shattered the weighty atmosphere and cleared the room with the swift urgency of a storm passing. I felt a rush of adrenaline as people began to rise, committing my words to memory. Jake lingered, still wrestling with his facade, but I had become the magnet of his disruption. Ella, you're going to regret this. He spat, taking a step toward me, aggression radiating off him like heat waves. But instead of fear, I felt something else entirely, a burning resolve that had begun to take root. The cafeteria emptied. The aftermath of our confrontation settled in. I stood there momentarily frozen, for the line that had divided us felt as thin as gossamer, unraveling into something uncharted. Sarah's words echoed in my mind. What did she have to show me? But the deeper question lingered: what would I do if Jake's anger boiled over? The culmination of fear and hope collided within me, and as I stepped away, leaving the cafeteria behind, I looked back to see Jake's shadow cast long against the tiles, filled with both uncertainty and potential. This wasn't over. Not yet. And as I made my way down the hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that while this was merely the prologue, something much more powerful was brewing just on the horizon, an undeniable, life-altering storm waiting to break. Would I be prepared for the whirlwind that awaited? I had no answers, only the weight of burgeoning hope and a deeper connection to my own truth stirring within me, ready for whatever lay ahead. The afternoon sun poured through the windows of the school, casting long shadows on the lockers as I navigated the familiar hallway. My heart still thumped from the confrontation in the cafeteria, yet I trudged forward, weighted not only by the remnants of bravery, but also by a gnawing anxiety. Sarah's message lingered in my mind, a beacon of curiosity that pulled me down this uncertain path. That I pushed open the door to the courtyard, which was quieter now, a sanctuary away from the chaotic hum of classmates rushing to their next classes. The air, cool and crisp, filled my lungs, but despite the fresh breeze, my thoughts remained heavy. What could Sarah have to show me? Was it something about Jake? The emotions of that morning still churned within me, stirring doubts about my decision to confront him so publicly. Across the courtyard, I spotted Sarah sitting alone on a bench, her expression unreadable. There was something serious about the way she held herself, her brow furrowed slightly as she watched the leaves rustle in the breeze. I approached with caution, my stomach twisting at the thought of what news she might deliver. "Hey," I said softly as I took a seat next to her. "What's going on?" She hesitated, biting her lip as she collected her thoughts. "I didn't want to drag you into this, Ella, but I thought you needed to know," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's about Jake. There's something you should see." A sinking feeling radiated through me. I nodded, bracing for the revelation, unsure whether the news would be reassuring or damning. Sarah slid her phone from her pocket, swiping through screens until she brought up a video, taken in dim lighting. Her eyes flicked to mine, searching for assurance that I was ready for whatever lay ahead. That I leaned closer, and the screen flickered to life. The footage revealed a group of students in a backstage area, arms swaying, laughter echoing. It didn't take long for the expressions of joy to curdle as Jake appeared, flanked by friends, his jovial mask slipping into something darker. "Look at this loser," he sneered at someone just out of frame, and the laughter dulled as harsh words followed, an insidious string of cruel insults that twisted my stomach. My breath tangled in my throat, the familiarity of his voice drowning discussions of bravery and defiance. "He's been like this for a while," Ella, Sarah said, her voice trembling. "His friends recorded it months ago, and it's been circulating. Everyone knows, but no one wants to say anything. It's like we're all caught in this silence." Rage bubbled within me, not just toward Jake, but at the entire dynamic that allowed such behavior to continue. My heart raced. Did we all play a part in perpetuating this cycle? I wrestled with the realization. Jake's aggression wasn't grounded in mere cruelty. It came from a mask he wore, forged from fear and insecurities that could break anyone beneath its weight. "What are you going to do?" Sarah's voice drew me back from my spiraling thoughts. The concern in her eyes offered a kinship I clung to desperately. "That I don't know," I admitted, the weight of indecision paralyzing. There was a flicker of hope that we could change the narrative, a possibility that our voice ceases, a united front could drown out the echoes of laughter that accompanied the bullying. Suddenly, a commotion at the edge of the courtyard drew our attention. Students were gathering with hushed voices, their backs turned to us. I felt an instinctual pull to join this crowd, dread creeping into my thoughts. "What's happening?" I asked, anxiety shooting through me as we stood and approached the gathering. I nudged my way through the throng. The faces of my classmates morphed from concern into something thicker, heavier. Their murmurs crawled under my skin. When I finally reached the center, my breath hitched at what lay before me. Jake stood there, confrontation twisting across his features, as another boy shouted accusations, a casualty of our game. "Had enough of your crap, Jake? You think you can just walk around being a jerk? Look at you," the boy yelled, his voice quaking with indignation. Jake's expression mirrored shades of fear and fury, his bravado shattered in the face of this unwelcome challenge. I could feel the energy and something much darker radiating from the crowd, like a charged storm. The moment I had tried to reshape had turned into a volatile upheaval, threatening to pull us all under. It was unsettling to witness someone unravel like this, yet also strangely powerful. The air buzzed with adrenaline and anticipation, a collective breath poised to release at any instant. Did my words chafe more than I intended? Would this unraveling lead to healing or chaos? Before I could process the swelling tide of chaos around us, Jake's gaze flicked toward me, searching for a lifeline amid his encroaching storm. And in that moment, it became undeniably clear. The battle was no longer just his. It was ours. Suddenly, with a resolve I didn't know I possessed, I stepped forward, aiming to defuse the storm, only to realize I was teetering at the edge of something far more significant than I could have anticipated. The stakes, perhaps, were about to escalate beyond our understanding, the waves building with unrelenting force, and it was up to us to navigate the chaos before us. Would we be the storm? Or would we find our way through it together? As I moved to speak, the unexpected sound of a shattering glass echoed from nearby, offering a new thread of uncertainty that left us reeling. What would happen next? As the shattering glass resonated through the courtyard, a chilling moment of silence engulfed us all. It was as if time had suspended itself, the air thick with disbelief. I swung my head toward the source of the sound, where a group of students stared in shock, points of glass glinting in the sun. A broken bottle lay shattered on the pavement, its remnants sparking a wave of panic. Jake's frozen expression shifted from anger to fear in an instant. His bravado crumbled, leaving a boy stripped of pretense. It was the vulnerability etched across his face that pulled at my heart. How often had I considered him merely a bully, forgetting the boy beneath the mask? A part of me felt a wild urge to comfort him, even as the past few weeks of torment flashed through my mind. "Everyone, just back up." A voice broke through my chaotic thoughts, laced with urgency. It was Sarah, her wide eyes scanning the crowd, her instincts as a leader compelling her to step in. "Let's not make things worse. We're not here to fight." As she spoke, I moved closer to her side, heart pounding with the gravity of our situation. The tension was palpable, a taut string ready to snap at any moment. The boy who had called Jake out shifted nervously, hands balled into fists, glaring at Jake as if the confrontation alone could shatter the darker truths lurking beneath the surface. "Just leave," Jake shouted suddenly, desperation cracking his voice. "You don't know anything about me." With that, the atmosphere shifted, sowing confusion among the spectators. Suddenly, the spotlight was not solely on him, but on all of us, our insecurities tangled together in the air like threads of a torn tapestry. I could feel the weight of judgment and intrigue pushing forward from the crowd, each gaze piercing deeper, expecting answers. My chest tightened. This had transformed beyond a mere confrontation. It was a reckoning. I could either contribute to the silencing chain, allowing Jake's torment to triumph, or I could confront the fragility of it all. A small voice within me wrestled for courage, urging me to step forward not for Jake, but for ourselves. "You're right, Jake," I called out, surprising even myself with the strength of my voice. "We don't know everything, but this isn't how it's supposed to be. We don't have to keep hurting each other." The murmurs around us grew, a blend of surprise and support, and something darker. Jake's gaze met mine, and in that brief moment, I saw flickers of something unfamiliar: regret, fear, perhaps a plea. But it quickly vanished, replaced with discomfort. "You don't get it," he retorted, anger bubbling back to the surface. "Nobody's supposed to care." "Maybe that's the problem," I said, my heart racing with the weight of each word. "This cycle of cruelty, what does it feed? It's destroying all of us. We can be more, do better to as if on cue." The crowd seemed to pause, inhaling my words, awaiting what would unfold next. A distant voice called out with a soft "yeah," echoing support from somewhere behind me. The warmth of unexpected solidarity filled the atmosphere, igniting a small spark of hope in the collective dread. Maybe this moment could mark the beginning of a shift. But Jake, trembling under the weight of the collective attention, turned to the crowd, his fingers trembling as he raked a hand through his hair. "You don't know me," he yelled, desperation driving the edge of his voice. "You judge me." Booty took another step forward, feeling the pulse of courage surge. "Then let us know you," I called out louder this time. "This cannot be the only version of ourselves we decide to live with. We are better than this." The murmurs grew as people shifted nervously, uncertain how to respond to a call for unity amidst such discord. I could see the glimmers of understanding start to form between classmates, the seed of realization sprouting amidst the chaos. Perhaps Jake's anger was not just a weapon. Perhaps it was the outer shell of something deeper, something we all shared in our fragile humanity. But before we could bridge that gap, a shrill sound interrupted. An alarm blared, startling us. All the school's safety protocols were triggered, warning us to seek shelter. The courtyard morphed into a frenzy, panic spreading through the crowd as students scrambled, unsure of where to go or what to do next. "Everyone, follow me," Sarah shouted, taking charge and rallying their attention. My heart raced not just from fear, but from the enormity of the moment that had just unraveled at the edge of confrontation. In the rush to escape the ricocheting uncertainty, I caught Jake's eye one final time. His expression held a turmoil of emotions, which I couldn't decipher before he slipped away in the whirlpool of fleeing students. Just at that moment, I understood. The battle we faced was not merely in the courtyard, but within each of us. The courage to confront our monsters before they swallowed us whole. As we reached the hall, it was a confusing rush of panic meets empathy. The doors closed behind us, sealing us in. Were we safe, or had we merely traded one storm for another? Whether Jake would emerge from this darker version of himself remained uncertain, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. My heart sank as the realization echoed through me. I had glimpsed the potential for change, but now, in the wake of the alarms, had we simply stumbled into the eye of a stronger storm? As the echoes of the alarm faded into an uneasy silence, I found myself shoved against a wall, the cold surface grounding me in a reality that felt far too surreal. We were safe, at least for the moment, but the tension lingered in the air like an unspent storm cloud. Questions churned within me, urgent and relentless. Had I truly made a difference? Had I opened a door for Jake? Or had I simply waved goodbye to a future we could have built together? "Stay close," Sarah called, her voice sharp and steady as she organized our group. I could barely focus on her words. My thoughts kept racing back to Jake. How had a single moment transformed those tangled emotions within him? He had been so close, so within reach, and yet in the chaos, he had slipped away to be why the time we gathered in the gymnasium, a makeshift refuge filled with anxious faces, an unsettling mix of relief and uncertainty settled over the students. My peers huddled together in small groups, whispering in hushed tones about what had just unfolded outside. I caught snippets of their conversations, words of concern, speculation, fear. But my mind was elsewhere, echoing with Jake's frantic expressions, his desperate plea for understanding that I searched the gymnasium for any sign of him. A familiar figure entered the boy who had initially confronted Jake. He had been on the verge of violence, and yet here he was, looking just as bewildered as the rest of us. Our eyes met momentarily, and something unspoken passed between USA, shared understanding of the weight of judgment we had cast. "Did you see what happened?" he asked, his voice low and cautious. "I didn't want it to go that far, it didn't have to," I responded, feeling an unexpected kinship swell within me. "We all have our reasons, Jake, too. If we just listen, maybe it could change something." He nodded, his eyes glimmering with uncertainty, but also with the faint hope of reconciliation. "I get that." But his voice faltered, and I, too, felt the heaviness of our reality. "What if he doesn't want to change?" Before I could respond, Sarah interrupted, calling everyone to gather closer. "Listen up. I know there's a lot of fear right now, but we need to check in on each other. Whatever is going on outside is beyond us, but we can control this moment." Her voice carried authority, soothing our restless hearts just a bit. Heads nodded, and a few students formed a circle, sharing their worries, their fears, and even their dreams. I joined them hesitantly, still longing for Jake's presence, yet craving connection. As we shared stories, some laced with joy, others tinged with pain, I felt the layers of our common struggles unfolding. Moments of laughter intermingled with tears. The gymnasium, with its stark lights and wild echoes, became a protective cocoon, shielding us from the outside troubles. Then, in the middle of a heartfelt confession about the pressures of our school, the doors burst open, and a teacher rushed in, breathing heavily, a look of concern plastered across her face. "We need to evacuate. There's been an incident reported near the parking lot." Panic erupted again, but I found my feet moving with purpose. This wasn't just about fear, it was about solidarity. I grabbed the boy I had spoken with earlier by the arm. "Let's make sure they get out safe. Jake too, wherever he is." Together, we began guiding the students toward the exits, ensuring nobody was left behind in the surge of confusion. The hallway turned into a chaotic stream of bodies, each bump and shove a reminder of the fragility of our youth. Hope was a fleeting whisper, almost drowned out by the tension in the air. As I reached for the door handle, ready to make a run for it, I felt a hand grip my shoulder. I turned to see Sarah, her expression mixed with worry and determination. "I don't know what's happening, but we can't lose focus. We need to look out for one another." "Jake," I started, the whisper escaping my lips like a prayer. "I know," she murmured, her gaze flickering toward the back of the crowd, where shadows loomed, a vague silhouette moving against the throng. "We'll find him. We can't give up on any of us." But as I pressed forward, something instinctual poured into my veins, an icy sensation of foreboding. The unsettling thought haunted me. What if we didn't reach him in time? We pushed through the doors, emerging into chaos, the parking lot buzzing with sirens, flashing lights, and anxious staff directing students away from the buildings. My heart raced, tumultuous dread swirling within me. I scanned the crowd, desperation climbing into my throat, the knowledge that within all this madness, something significant lay unraveling, just beyond my reach. And then, across the lot, I saw a figure turned away, head hung low, as if he stood at the edge of a precipice. My breath caught, and my heart thundered loudly. "Jake, wait!" I shouted, but before I could take a step forward, the ground trembled beneath us, and a blinding flash erupted in the distance, splitting the air with a deafening roar. In that moment, time fell still, and I felt the world around me twist into an unimaginable darkness. We had just begun grasping at change, and yet now we faced a threat greater than fear itself, one that could tear apart any fragile threads of connection we were only beginning to weave. Was it truly too late for all of us? The dust settled slowly, swirling softly in the afternoon light. And in that eerie stillness, the cacophony of chaos muted into a thick silence that enveloped us like a heavy blanket. I stood frozen, every fiber of my being straining against the urge to run to throw myself toward Jake, to make sure he was all right, to pull him back from the edge of whatever darkness had swallowed him whole. But the sight of him, his vulnerable back turned toward me, shoulders tense as if bracing against a storm, held my feet frozen to the ground, an anchor in a tempest of uncertainty. When the world came crashing back, the sirens sang a haunting melody, urgency pulsating in the air, everyone scattered in a frenzy. Students dashed in every direction, faces twisted in fear, echoing the raw emotions housed within each of us. Somehow, I felt trapped in my own thoughts, spiraling between hope and despair. Had I awakened something in Jake during our confrontation? Or had I simply amplified the monster prowling beneath his skin? Ella. Sarah's voice broke through the haze. She had sprinted toward the thrumming noise, wild determination etched across her features. We need to get him out of here. I couldn't pull my gaze from Jake's rigid form. He was lost in the crowd, each second feeling like an instant of eternity where I could lose him forever. Fear gripped my heart tighter than any words spoken before. It echoed in my ears. What if we hadn't reached him? What if the shadows of his past had become too overwhelming? And then, as if time operated uniquely in those chaotic moments, everything came rushing forth. I took a deep breath and pressed through the crowd, weaving my way toward Jake, encouraged by Sarah's unwavering belief that we could steer him back to safety. I stood up for myself today. Now it was time for me to stand up for him if he would let me. Jake, I shouted, my voice barely heard above the clamor, desperation seasoning each syllable. Please. He turned it in stark contrast with the chaos around him. His eyes widened, mirroring the vulnerability I had seen in him moments before. For a fleeting instant, hesitation flickered across his dark features, shadows warring with flickers of recognition. He was caught between the expectations of everyone around him and the deep-rooted pain that had quelled his spirit for so long. It's not too late, I continued, rushing nearer, even as the world around us spun. We can face it together. I know it's overwhelming everything, but you don't have to go through it alone. And what do you think I can do? He spat back, his voice raw, trembling. Just erase everything? Pretend it never happened? No, I cried, arms trembling as I took a bold step forward. But you can choose to confront it. Choose to be better. We can help each other break this cycle. A flicker of something, was it hope? Passed behind his eyes before he shook his head, anger melting into something indistinguishable. You don't understand, he started. No, Jake. I don't, I admitted, feeling the fissures between us begin to close. But we can learn. You're not just a monster. There's more within you. I've seen it. Please, let me help you find it. In that moment, we were suspended in a liminal space where everything began to shift. Other students started to gather around me, Sarah at my side, and in unison we stood, our voices rising in newfound solidarity, a chorus declaring that we were done with being pawns in this cruel game of fear. Somewhere within that electric atmosphere, Jake faltered, body trembling, and tears began to brim in his eyes. You really think I can change? He whispered, broken and uncertain. I know you can, I whispered back, my heart aching for him. But you have to believe it too. There's so much to fight for to uncover, and you don't have to do it alone. As chaos swirled around us, the fear, the uncertainty seemed to unravel, breaking free from the violent grip of his own anger. Jake's shoulders began to shake, and in the burgeoning tension, I took a step closer, unafraid. You have a choice, I said softly, extending a hand toward him. Let us be the ones to stand beside you as you fight. We can walk through this together. The moment hung in the air, charged with every unspoken thought and hidden fear. I could see the internal struggle flickering within him, as if he were weighing the possibilities of hope against the familiar comfort of despair. And then he moved, hesitantly at first, but there was a determination that carried him closer. Our shared past hovered between us, weaving a complex tapestry from pain to understanding. I don't know how, he said finally, but this time his voice was laced with vulnerability, the crack evident. Neither do we, Sarah chimed in, her fierce spirit igniting those early flames of courage that trembled hesitantly within the crowd. But we're here to learn, to grow together. You don't have to keep wearing the mask. In that moment, with the roar of sirens still echoing and the world outside still too chaotic, I reached for Jake's hand, offering a grace neither of us had fully felt before, the strength in vulnerability. Desperation peeled away as he clasped my hand, humanity threading through as he confronted his inner turmoil. Let's find a way to break the cycle, I said, voice trembling with emotion. Let's fight for healing, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has suffered. Together, we stood intertwined in the wreckage of our past. My heart swelled with a profound understanding of the power within us, the power to rewrite our stories. The willingness to forgive, to unify, to confront the shadows, no longer sought to cast darkness but to illuminate a new path. And as Jake connected with me, I could feel the warmth of transformation rising between USA connection forged through shared narratives, fight against isolation, and the significant resolve to be better, not just for ourselves but also for those still chained by fear. The storm continued to swirl, shadows flaring against brightening hopes, reminding me, in the cacophony, that no battle is fought alone. We are forever changed by those we connect with. Each bruise, each scar, we deserve to heal together. That was the moment I learned the power of forgiveness, how it transcends pain and transforms vulnerabilities into strengths, weaving a resilience that would carry us forward. And I realized, with all the raw emotion coursing through me, that sometimes healing is found in the very act of holding out a hand toward another. Together, we will fight for this. Together, I whispered, as a new chapter unfurled before us, rich with hope, defiance, and unity. With that, Jake squeezed my hand, lights breaking through shadows, and in the vibrant stillness that followed, we could finally breathe.